Welcome to Pursuit of the Light podcast. My name is Nate Byers, and I will be your host today. Welcome to episode 6, The Spectator Sport of Church. If you would like to learn more about this podcast and myself, you can I'm on Instagram at Nate Byers. Our website is pursuelight.org. And if you would like to see the video version of these podcasts, you can. They're on YouTube at channel name Nate Byers. And if you are on an Apple device, if you wouldn't mind just leaving us a review, you can just tap the stars. But if you do write something, I will read it. The reviews on Apple do help. They help with the way that Apple ranks the podcasts. So even if you just tap the stars, it's extremely helpful. We are a listener-funded podcast here, and if you'd like to support our podcast, you can. pursuelight.org/donate. So, in this episode of The Spectator Sport of Church, we're going to be talking about how the church has become this idea of more of a sporting event than church itself. So, what did church look like? Well, I think the biggest example for what church looked like, or what we modeled church as, is Jesus himself. When Jesus was walking on the earth, he had his disciples and his followers. And over the years, we've turned it into this where you have one person, they stand before a crowd of people and they talk for 30 minutes to an hour, share a bunch of funny comments, and then they get off stage, sing a couple worship songs somewhere in there, and then we go home. And I don't think that's what church really is. When you've seen with Jesus and his disciples, it was more of a daily walk. You know, he walked with them, he shared his life. He was a part of their life. He was involved in everything they did. I found this quote by Francis Chan, who's wrote several great books. He was a pastor of a megachurch, and he stepped down because he didn't feel that that church, or the American version of what we have or what we call as church, he didn't feel that it was actually what church is and what it should be. So his quote that I found was, "True discipleship involves deep relationships. Jesus didn't simply lead a weekly Bible study. He lived life with his disciples, and he taught through actions as well as words." This idea of where we just have somebody get in front of us and just give us a lesson, and it's even gone to the extreme of churches have podcasts where you can just listen to their sermons and then anytime throughout the week. The idea of church is, it's on that Sabbath, number one, to give that's God's holy day, but it's also a day of rest. It's a way for us to connect with our church family. And the church that I attend does a very good job. We're not perfect, but we do, I think, a very good job of connecting. But church isn't a building or a place you go, or even when you sit down in front of somebody and let them speak to you or preach to you. Church is an action. Church is where you are ingrained, you are fighting in the trenches with your brothers and sisters in the faith. You should know every single thing about their life. And the same thing, they should know everything about your life. They should be involved, so when you make important decisions, you consult them and ask for their opinion first. And it's a way deeper relationship than just asking for prayer requests and praises and stuff like that. It's way deeper. And I feel like so often here in America, we have this idea where it's just a Bible study or a place to go to hear someone talk to us. It's more than that. It's a community. It should be almost the only community we involve in. And the problem with these mega churches, or even churches in general, is just we don't connect with people. We see each other on a weekly basis, once a week, maybe twice a week if on Wednesday, if you have Wednesday programs, or maybe if you have a Bible study or something. But we should be involved in every aspect of the person's life. And they should be in ours, because they're there to keep us in check, and we're there to keep them in check. But how can we do that if we never talk to them? As growing up in the church, it was very easy just to talk to your church friends on Sunday, maybe on Wednesday, then the rest of the week you're hanging out with other people. As I'm getting older, it's like I'm realizing that we need to be more involved and more connected with them. The idea behind the church was to build a family. And in a family, you're open with each other. You see each other at their best and at their worst. You're there for when they're struggling, and you're there for when they succeed. So often, I think we forget that, and we just view it as a place, somewhere you go on Sunday, spend an hour or two, and then you come home and have fried chicken. So I seen this video of Francis Chan being interviewed, and the interviewer was asking why he left his megachurch, because he was pastoring a megachurch at the time. And if I remember, I'll try to link the video that I seen, but it'll be in the show notes if I can find it and if I remember to do it. But he was being asked, why did you leave? And his response was a story. And it was a story about one of his members. At his church, I believe it was out in California, they had a lot of gang problems in their area. So they had an outreach to them. And so he was reaching out to this one gang member, and they connected, and he became saved, and he started joining Francis's church. So he joined, he became a member, got baptized, did the whole church thing. He was super pumped, and he attended for about a month or so, and then he left. And Francis didn't, he's seen him, and he's seen him every week, and then all of a sudden he just stopped after about a month. Well, eventually a couple months later, several months went by or something, and Francis ran into him at a coffee shop or seen him around town and said, "Hey, well, what happened? Why'd you stopped? I haven't seen you at church in a while." He goes, "Well, I thought when I was joining your church, I was joining a family." And the member gave the reference of how when he joined the gang, it was like a family. They had his back no matter what. He was a part of that gang. That was his family. He was willing to die for them. And when he joined this church, that's what he thought he was getting into, is this idea of that it was a family. And that they were going to be there for him when he needed it, and he was going to be there for them when they needed it. But it wasn't. It became this idea of, you go to the church, you sit there, you listen, you say, hey, ask how people's doing. You stay Facebook friends. That kind of level of friendship. You don't go any deeper. You know what they're doing. You know what they're up to. But you don't ask, you don't dive into what they're really struggling with. And he didn't like that. And that's why he left. He left the church. And that's why Francis stopped pastoring at his church. That's why he stepped down. Because he felt that it wasn't this family. That story woke him up, and it made him realize that church has become a spectator sport. You go there to watch it and not to participate in it. In church, we can't be on the sidelines. You can't sideline your family. You can't be a sideline parent. You have to be involved in every aspect. And that's what church is. And that's what I believe God made it to be. So how do we save the church from itself? I believe that we can save church from itself in a couple ways. First way is we need to pray for our churches. And God needs to come back into church. Church has become a production in an experience. God doesn't care about all that stuff. He doesn't care what lights you have, what music you play. It's more of a heart issue. So we need to, number one, bring him back in, and you can do that through prayer. Get him back involved in your church. Number two, is get involved with your church family. Pick a group of 5 people and really dive deep. If you can really connect, really know them, really get to know them on a deeper level, because then if you know them, then they'll go and connect with other people. And the third way that I think to save the church is, I think when you become like a house church. I don't think a house church is perfect. There's we're humans still, we're imperfect, and we live in a broken world. But from what I've seen, a house church makes the most sense, because church has become this event. We've made it into a production. Everything has a cue. You start at this time, exactly at this time, and you end at this time every single week. Why is that? Why do you have to set a time on how long we can spend with our God and with our family? It shouldn't be. It should be a spend as long as needed, as long as you want, but it isn't. So to recap, prayer, connecting, and house church. I think those are the 3 main ways to save our church. Because the church, Satan is after the church, and he'll do it in small increments. Everyone's heard the story, if you put a frog inside of a pot with water and then turn up the heat, he'll stay in there until he boils to death, because he won't realize that the water's rising, the temperature of the water's rising. But if you put him in a boiling pot of water, he'll immediately jump out. The idea is the same. Little by little, Satan will slowly move us away from what actual church is. And if we don't stop it and don't get in front of it and actually become churches that are families, that read the Bible, that are less concerned about hurting people's feelings, and if we actually dive deep into it, I believe we can save the church. So thank you for listening to episode 6. I hope you took something away, or if it made you think of something in a different way. Again, I'd like to remind you that if you would like to leave a review, it's extremely helpful, and I will definitely check it out if you write something. I hope you tune in next time for episode 7, Reverence for Life. We're going to be going through a little section of Genesis 9. It should be pretty interesting. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.